Welcome back to the Game of Two Halves podcast. It is the season finale, and it's time for our very, very first guest of the evening. Earlier today, I caught up with the Geelong Region Football Committee Chairman, Mike McKINSTRY. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome Mike to the show. Welcome, Mike, to the final episode of the Game of Two Halves podcast. How you been?
Yeah, good, Tonshi. Thanks. So great to see you got some sponsorship from the Gordon and everything. So that's fantastic. So yeah, been good.
Yeah, mentioning the Gordon, they've been absolutely fantastic this year, as have all of our sponsors. Indeed, our major sponsor for the first part of the year, Euro Football Star, and obviously the Gordon for the latter part, and all the little sponsors along the way. But it's been a big year. It has been a huge year on and off the field, Mike. But Geelong Region Football Committee has really overseen a massive year in many ways, more than just one way. But tell us, what have been your highlights, or what have been some of your highlights for the year as far as the local football scene is concerned?
Yeah, I think the main things, Tonshi, and probably all the clubs and the folks that joined this call a bit later, hopefully have saw some growth in the game. You know, particularly we went through that difficult period, of course, with COVID. But it's great to see the participation levels coming back up. So we're now 5,600 plus in total that play, football week in, week out in Geelong, and that's great. And it's great to see the growth in the women's game in particular. And, obviously the Women's World Cup probably to some extent were a contributor to that. Although I'm hopeful that the Women's World Cup's going to inspire young girls to actually join in the coming season. So at this point in time, we're seeing growth coming through and a lot of strong conversation from the clubs where they're seeing a lot of applications in the early phase of this year. But it'd be interesting to see how it goes next year. But Geelong's really strong at the moment. It's been really good. We had a great country championships early in the year that was hosted by us last year, you might remember, and this year it was hosted in Ballarat, and we had a great turnout there. We had 4 teams that made it through to the finals. Unfortunately, as can happen in finals, it didn't actually go our way. But the participation level was great, and the feedback from all the parents that went along, they really enjoyed that format. And then also we changed the format, for example, in the local leagues at the younger levels. We put in place the hubs that we used to have in place years ago, where it's hosted
How
over
did
a
that
weekend.
go?
Yeah, no, it went really well. We had to go and we spent a bit of money because we wanted to do it right. So we went and bought some goals that we could store in Storage King in North Geelong. We got a free truck that clubs could use and just drive up to the storage unit there, take the goals, go and set it all up, and made it a lot easier for clubs to do it. And of course, apart from anything else, it created a bit of a vibe in that particular location that was hosting for that weekend. And then the clubs organised between themselves that then the next team comes along, the next club comes along, gets the goals, and it gives them a bit of money as well, because as you know, when you bring all the parents there and all the kids, they all want to have coffees and sandwiches and whatever, and gives the clubs a bit of income that they wouldn't otherwise get if it was just like the usual sort of fixture format. So that's worked really well. So, and we're hoping to look at that. We are going to do that again this coming season, and it'll get even better. So, but yeah, it's been a really good season. Really good.
Yeah, and let's talk about those hubs. So it's the under 7s and the under 9s. Is that right? Just those two age groups? Yeah. Because I know in years gone by, they used to have the under 11s as part of it, and it was just getting too big, way too big, that they actually had to split it up. But it's great to see that the numbers are really, really increasing across the board. The juniors as well, it seemed both in the girls and the boys section, there was a lot more teams playing, and hence a lot more players playing as well. But also the senior comp. We saw the women's comp this year go to 15 teams, if I'm not mistaken, and split at the halfway mark. And during our recent grand final special, both the grand finalists said how good it was to have that competition split up at the halfway mark in the women's comp. But we've also seen the men's comp just sort of stabilise. Is that the name of the game for next year as far as the local leagues are concerned, just to stabilise the competitions, or is there talk of competition structures changing?
No, there is talk of comps structures changing, and it's based on feedback that we've had, though, even though it was successful this year. We often, as you would know from your experience in the past, and maybe others on the call, depending on the number of teams we've got, trying to get it right such that you've got a competitive league. You don't want to have that situation where you split the comp and then some of the kids, particularly younger kids, are going out and getting thrashed. It never motivates them, and particularly also in the women's game, You don't want to get to a situation where some of the, mums that, they've not had a chance to, they're not necessarily honed their skills yet, so they've come back into the game, or they want to just play socially. But equally, what they don't want to do is get thumped, 15-0. So we're looking at the structure. We've actually got a couple of workshops coming up. We've already had one session with all the clubs, and we've got some ideas on how we might change the structure of the leagues that we're still working on. But it's more about trying to grade the clubs into, the leagues rather, so that we don't have the disparity between the top and the bottom in the way that we maybe have had. And you're always going to have a situation whereby you're going to have strong clubs, and hey, that's great. You can't have some clubs shying away, saying, well, I don't want to play them because they're good. Well, shit, that's part of the game, and it equally brings on their skills, for those that haven't at that top level yet. You've got to play, this, and the audience know this. You've got to play good clubs to actually get better yourselves as a club. So we're the good news is that what we're doing is we're listening to the clubs this year, and we're going to get them, not that we didn't last year, but we're going to have a couple of workshops, and we've had a really successful start. We've got 2 more coming up, and we're going to go back to FV and say, look, here's our proposal as the GRFC on how we want to structure the leagues going forward for the coming season. And FV are actually open to that, which hasn't always been that way. It's been a little bit more black and white, saying here's the way that we do it, here's the competition rules. But that and Simon Wrench has joined, and Forey, of course, has left us, and Simon's in discussions with the team in FV about how we might want to approach it next year. So yeah, watch out for this space. We're hoping it's going to be even better.
Well, that sounds really exciting, and certainly, as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure as far as most of our listeners are concerned, bring on 2024. But in the meantime, Mike, we saw this year 2 very, very important strategical documents being developed. One was the Victorian Regional Football Review, commissioned by Football Victoria. The other one was the G21 Soccer Strategy. That's one that has so many significant implications for football here in Geelong. What's the latest with those 2 documents? Let's take a look at the Football Victoria Regional Football Review. What's the latest with regards to that development, or the development of that particular review?
Yeah, well, as it happens, part of the reason I'm joining you early is because we've got a GRFC meeting tonight, at which we're going to get some feedback on the status of that. So I'm not totally up to speed just yet, but I know that they've reached out to all the key stakeholders. I know I was interviewed going back a couple of months ago now, and we sort of provided feedback on things that were, if you like, were working well, and things that needed improvement. And I was encouraged that FV were listening, and also the fact that they've put in place an independent body to actually do the interviews and then consolidate the feedback. And that way, it's not like FV leading the witness, if that's the right terminology. It's actually somebody else saying, here's what clubs and associations and the GRFC, for example, provided the feedback about what needs to be done to improve the situation going forward. So I think it's a start. We haven't got to the point of implementation yet. I think they're on the point of consolidating all of that feedback. And I haven't seen any sort of final report. So I might know a little bit later, maybe at the early part of next season when we talk again. Clearly by then we'll know what FV's findings have been. And I'm sure it'll be circulated to everybody between now and then.
Yeah. And the G21 Soccer Strategy, obviously the period for consultation or providing feedback has passed. What's the next stage in that? Where are we at with regards to that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I know that we've talked about this on a few of the calls that we've had over the last few months, but it's a slow process, unfortunately, and sometimes dealing with local government can be. They're at the point now where they've consolidated all the feedback, and I've read through a lot of the feedback as well on the document itself, and it's all largely been positive. I think the fact that there is a strategy in the first place, because it's been lacking, is really important, because it's a bit of a touchstone that people can go back to and say, well, what are you trying to achieve in the local region? And it's all detailed there for people to read. And I think importantly, we've got to keep it live. But where it's at right now, we're just waiting on the adoption by the local governments. And obviously the G21 Geelong's clearly the biggest participant in that, but clearly we've got to get all the other LGAs on board as well. And they've also done their own sort of reach out and have your say kind of thing. So that's been consolidated by Inside Edge, the company that was engaged to do the work for us between ourselves and FV. And again, it's been good to get an independent body equally in the same way that FV have done, because they can consolidate things in a way that that is open and transparent, and share that with everybody, warts and all, and good things too. So So hopefully the next stage basically is for the local governments the councils to adopt it. And that then means that as we go forward and start to make applications and clubs make applications for example, investment and support, they can refer to the document. And we've already had one of the clubs do just that. In fact, in a recent grant round, they referred back to specifically the document. And that way as it received and this was the case of Geelong, if they received the grant application, they can cross-reference, this relates to that. That's consistent with the strategy. That makes sense.
Fantastic, yeah.
So
it's already paying some sort of dividends even before it has been finalised and released, so to speak. But that is good news. And look, mate, it certainly looks like there's exciting times ahead for football here. But 5,600, geez, let's grow that number and hopefully hit over 6,000 next year. Wouldn't that be a milestone figure?
Yeah, wouldn't it? That'd be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. Mike, thank you very much for all of your support, all of the collaboration in 2023. It has been a big year. We're gearing up for an even bigger 2024. Look forward to catching up with you in the next season, in the new year.
Thanks, mate. And thanks to all the clubs and that all put in, week out, the families and, all the people on this call know it's not easy to organise things. So hats off to the presidents and all the committees that are out there, volunteering and in terms of their day job, they're busy as well. And but it's all for, trying to grow the game and hopefully excite the kids as they then progress into adults and we have a bit of fun.
Absolutely. Good on you. Thanks for that, Mike.
All right, mate.
Bye-bye. Mike McKinstry, the chairman of the Geelong Region Football Committee. We'll be back very, very shortly with our very, very next guest. Don't go away, folks. It is the Game of Two Halves podcast, powered by the Geelong Region Soccer Show and proudly brought to you by The Gordon.